The universe was old. The Galactic Confederation was older than human civilization itself. For 12,000 years, 17 different species had ruled the stars together. They built cities on 1,000 worlds. They mapped every corner of known space. They believed they knew everything worth knowing. They were wrong about one thing. They were wrong about Earth. In the great records of the Confederation, humanity had a small entry. It said, Class 7 species, pre-spacefaring, primitive, quarantined, no strategic value. The aliens had visited Earth once, 500 years ago. They saw humans fighting each other with swords and arrows. They saw disease and poverty. They saw a species that would probably destroy itself before ever reaching the stars. So they left. They put a warning beacon around the solar system that told all passing ships to stay away. They forgot about the little blue planet and its strange, violent creatures. But humans did not forget. They did not destroy themselves. Instead, they built. They learned. They reached their moon, then Mars, then the outer planets. They found the alien beacon and studied it in secret. They learned how faster-than-light travel worked. They built their own ships, their own weapons, their own fleet. And they waited. Admiral Una was 53 years old. She had served in the Terran Defense Fleet for 30 years. She had gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much. Tonight, she sat in the command center of the TDF headquarters, deep beneath the mountains of Korea. She was reading reports when the alarm came. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Taiho, spinning around in his chair. His face was pale. "We're receiving a transmission. It's not meant for us." Una walked to his station. On the screen, alien symbols scrolled past. The translation software worked quickly, turning the strange language into words she could understand. What she read made her blood run cold. It was a distress call. Not one distress call, hundreds of them. Thousands. They came from worlds she had never heard of, from species she had only read about in classified files. And they all said the same thing. The Drath are coming. They cannot be stopped. Everyone is dying. "Who are the Drath?" Taiho asked. Commander Suri pulled up another file on her screen. A species from the Outer Rim. Conquerors. They've been expanding for centuries, but they stayed far from Confederation space. Until now. The tactical display showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared one by one, spreading like a disease. Each dot was a Dreth attack. Each dot was a world burning. 14 Confederation planets destroyed in the last month, Suri said quietly. Their combined fleet is in full retreat. They're losing everywhere. Una watched the red dots multiply. The Dreth Armada was massive, hundreds of thousands of warships moving through space like a swarm of locusts. The Confederation ships were scattered, disorganized, running. "They're not coming for us," Taiho said, checking the trajectory. "They're bypassing our solar system entirely. They don't even know we exist." "Yet," Una replied. "What happens when they finish with the Confederation?" No one answered. They all knew. When the Dreth ran out of easy targets, they would search for new ones. Earth was 3 weeks away at their speed. Maybe 4. "We have time," Suri said. "We could hide. Turn off all our signals. Let them pass." Una shook her head. "And then what? Live in fear forever? Hope they never notice us? That's not survival. That's waiting to die." She turned to face her officers. These were good people. Loyal people. They had dedicated their lives to protecting Earth from threats that might never come. Now the threat was real. Now everything they had built would be tested. "Contact the President," Una said. "Tell him we have a decision to make." The meeting happened fast. Within 2 hours, the leaders of every nation on Earth were connected through secure channels. Yuna presented what she knew. She showed them the alien distress calls. She showed them the size of the Dreth fleet. She showed them what would happen if humanity did nothing. Some leaders wanted to hide. Some wanted to fight. Some didn't believe any of it was real. But in the end, they voted. And the vote was clear. Humanity would not hide. Humanity would fight. The Terran Defense Fleet had been building in secret for 50 years. 3,000 warships, hidden in asteroid belts and beneath the surfaces of dead moons. They were smaller than Confederation vessels, uglier than Dreth warships. But they were fast, and they were deadly, and they were crewed by people who had never known peace. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. They had invented 1,000 ways to kill. They had survived plagues and wars and disasters that should have ended them. And through it all, they had learned one truth that no other species in the galaxy understood. Sometimes, the only way to survive was to become more dangerous than anything that threatened you. Yuna stood on the bridge of her flagship, the TDF Resolve. Around her, officers ran final checks on weapons and shields. Below, in the massive hangar bays, pilots climbed into their fighters. Engineers made last adjustments to engines that would push their ships faster than they were designed to go. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Taiho through the communication system, "all ships report ready. The fleet is waiting for your order." Yuna looked out the observation window. She could see hundreds of ships around her, their engines glowing blue in the darkness of space. Beyond them, more ships. And more. 3,000 vessels, carrying 200,000 people. Not all of them would come back. She knew that. They all knew that. "Open a channel to all ships," she said. A soft tone indicated the channel was open. Every person in the fleet was listening. "This is Admiral Yuna. For 50 years, we have prepared for this moment. We have trained. We have built. We have waited. Today, the waiting ends." She paused, gathering her thoughts. The galaxy does not know we exist. They think we are primitives, savages, children playing with rocks while they rule the stars. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Around her, officers stood straighter, fists clenched, eyes hardened. "We go now to fight an enemy that has never been defeated. We go to help species that have never helped us. We go because that is what humans do. When we see evil, we fight it. When we see suffering, we end it. When we see people in need, we answer." She took a breath. "Some of us will not return. I will not lie to you about that. But those who fall will be remembered forever. And those who survive will return home knowing they saved not just Earth, but the entire galaxy." Yuna turned to her navigation officer. "Set course for the Varus system. Maximum speed." "Yes, Admiral." The engines roared to life. The fleet began to move. 3,000 ships accelerated toward the distant stars, toward a war that had nothing to do with them, toward an enemy that had no idea they existed. The Galactic Confederation was about to meet humanity, and nothing would ever be the same. The Great Assembly Hall on planet Varth was the most important place in the galaxy. It had stood for 8,000 years. Its walls were made of living crystal that sang when touched. Its ceiling showed the stars in real time, a window to the universe itself. Here, the 17 species of the Galactic Confederation made their laws and decided their future. Today, the hall was filled with fear. High Chancellor Morvith stood at the center of the chamber. He was an impressive creature, 8 limbs made of purple crystal, a body that shifted and flowed like liquid glass. He had led the Confederation for 200 years. He had never seen his people so afraid. Silence. He slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor. The crystal walls picked up the sound and amplified it until the whole room vibrated. "We will have order. The shouting died down, but the fear remained. Morvith could see it in every face, every tentacle, every eye stalk in the room. Ambassador Kellis of the Verth rose from her seat. She was a serpent-like being, covered in green scales that changed color with her mood. Right now they were dark gray, the color of despair. The Dreth have taken 3 more worlds since yesterday, she said. Our fleet at the Nara station was destroyed completely. 40,000 ships gone in a single battle. Our best commanders are dead. Our supply lines are broken. We have nothing left. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Representatives whispered to each other in a dozen different languages. The translation systems worked overtime, turning alien words into meaning. We must negotiate, said Ambassador Drell of the Montari. He was an insect-like creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that saw everything. The Dreth are not unreasonable. They want resources, territory. Perhaps we can give them what they want in exchange for peace. You fool, hissed Kellis. The Dreth do not negotiate. They do not make deals. They harvest. They take everything, our worlds, our technology, our bodies. There is no peace with them. Only death. Then we fight, shouted Ambassador Gorn of the Talaxians. He was massive, covered in thick red fur, with tusks that curved up from his jaw. We gather every ship we have. We make a final stand. We die with honor. And then what? Morvith asked quietly. We die. Our children die. Our civilizations die. Everything we have built for 12,000 years ends. Is that honor? The chamber fell silent. Morvith looked around at the representatives. These were the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They had controlled the destiny of trillions of lives. And now they sat helpless, waiting for the end. We have no good choices, he said. We can fight and lose. We can surrender and die. We can run and be hunted. The Dreth have won. We must accept this. No. The voice was quiet, but it cut through the chamber like a blade. Every head turned toward the ancient doors at the back of the hall. A woman stood there. She was small-tiny compared to most species in the room. Her skin was a strange pinkish-brown color. Her hair was black and cut short. She wore a simple gray uniform with a patch on her shoulder, a blue circle surrounded by white stars. The representatives stared. They had never seen anything like her. Who is this creature? Morvith demanded. How did it enter the sacred hall? Guards rushed toward the woman, their weapons raised. She didn't move. She didn't flinch. She just stood there, watching them come, with a small smile on her lips. Stop, said Ambassador Kellis suddenly. Her scales had turned a strange color, something between curiosity and disbelief. She slithered closer to the woman, studying her. I know what this is. I have seen the records. What is it? Gorn asked. A human. Kellis circled the woman slowly. From the quarantine planet. Earth, they call it. A Class 7 species. We classified them as primitives 500 years ago. Laughter spread through the chamber. A primitive? Here? In the middle of a galactic crisis? The woman waited until the laughter died down. Then she spoke again. My name is Captain Hana. I represent the United Earth Coalition. We have been monitoring your communications. We know about the Dreth. We know about your losses. And we are here to help. More laughter. This time, it was louder, crueler. Help? Morvith's crystal body shook with amusement. A Class 7 species wants to help us? Do you even have spaceflight, little creature? Do you have weapons that can scratch a Dreth hull? Do you have anything at all? Hana didn't react to the insult. Her smile remained calm, patient. We have a fleet. 3,000 warships with more coming. 3,000? Gorn snorted. The Dreth have 400,000. Your entire fleet would be destroyed in minutes. Perhaps. But our ships are not like yours. And our people are not like you. Explain, Kellis said. She was the only one not laughing. Something about this small creature made her nervous. Something in those eyes. Hannah walked forward slowly. The guards moved to stop her, but Kellis waved them away. The human walked until she stood at the very center of the chamber, surrounded by beings who had ruled the galaxy since before her species discovered fire. Your civilizations achieved spaceflight through cooperation, Hannah said. You united your worlds, you shared technology, you expanded peacefully across the stars. You have had wars, yes, but they were limited, civilized, wars with rules and boundaries, wars that ended in treaties and agreements. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of every representative. Humans are different. We spent our entire history trying to destroy ourselves. We invented weapons that could end all life on our planet before we invented vaccines for common diseases. We perfected the art of killing on an industrial scale. We have fought wars where millions died in single battles. We have dropped nuclear bombs on our own cities. The chamber had gone very quiet. You look at us and see primitives, Hannah continued. Small, weak creatures from a small, unimportant planet. But what you do not see is what made us survive. What you do not see is what 10,000 years of constant warfare has taught us. And what is that? Morvith asked. His amusement had faded. Something in the human's voice made his crystal body vibrate with unease. Hannah smiled. It was not a warm smile. We learned that there is no enemy we cannot defeat. We learned that sacrifice is just another weapon. We learned that when we are pushed to the edge, we do not break, we become something terrifying. She paused. The Dreth have never faced an enemy like us. They have conquered species who fought to survive. We do not fight to survive. We fight to win. And we are willing to pay any price for victory. The representatives looked at each other. Some were confused. Some were skeptical. But a few, the older ones, the ones who had studied alien histories, felt something cold settle in their stomachs. You are offering your help, Kellis said slowly. But you barely know us. We ignored your planet for 500 years. We left you in quarantine like animals in a cage. Why would you fight for us? Hannah looked at the Serpent Ambassador. For a moment, her mask of calm slipped, and something real showed through. Something sad. Because you need help, she said simply. That is reason enough. The chamber was silent. Then Morvith laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. Pretty words from a primitive. But words do not win wars. You have 3,000 ships against 400,000. You will be crushed, and your species will be erased from history. This is not bravery, it is stupidity. Hannah nodded slowly. You may be right. We may all die. But I have learned something in my years, Chancellor. Something that your species never had to learn because you never faced extinction. And what is that? Hannah turned and began walking toward the door. When you have nothing to lose, she said over her shoulder, you become very, very dangerous. She reached the door and paused. The human fleet will arrive in this system in 6 hours. We will engage the Dreth with or without your support. Watch if you want. Hide if you want. But when it is over, remember this moment. Remember that you laughed at us. She stepped through the door and disappeared. The chamber remained silent for a long time. Finally, Kellis spoke. Her scales had turned white the color of fear. I think, she said quietly, we may have made a terrible mistake 500 years ago. No one disagreed. Fleet Commander Theres had served the Confederation Navy for 300 years. He had fought in 12 wars, commanded 100 battles, and trained a generation of officers. He thought he understood warfare better than any living being. Then he watched the human fleet arrive, and he realized he knew nothing. He stood on the observation deck of the Confederation flagship Eternal Victory. It was the largest warship ever built, 5 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack a planet, crewed by 20,000 of the best soldiers in the galaxy. It floated at the center of what remained of the Confederation fleet. 200 ships, battered and tired, waiting for the end. The human ships came out of faster-than-light travel like a storm. They were small. The largest was maybe half a kilometer. Most were much smaller fighters and bombers that looked like insects next to the Confederation cruisers. They were ugly things, all angles and sharp edges, painted in dark colors that made them hard to see against the stars. But there were so many of them. Theris counted. 3,000 ships, just a human woman had said. No more were arriving. 4,000. 5,000. They kept coming, wave after wave, filling the space around Varth with a cloud of metal and fire. Their formation makes no sense, said his second-in-command, a Virith named Sorrel. Her scales were flickering between confusion and worry. They have no defensive lines, no supply ships visible, no clear command structure. They are scattered like debris. That cannot be right, Theris muttered. No fleet would enter battle without formation. It would be chaos. Commander, a young officer pointed at a screen. One of the human ships is approaching. They are requesting permission to dock. Theris hesitated. He did not trust these humans. He had read the old files, the reports from the scouts who had visited Earth 500 years ago. They had described a violent, primitive species that seemed determined to destroy itself. A species not worth the effort of contact. But Captain Hannah's words echoed in his mind. When you have nothing to lose, you become very dangerous. Allow them to dock, he said. An hour later, Captain Hannah stood beside him on the observation deck. She was even smaller up close, barely reaching his chest. But her eyes were steady, and she moved with the confidence of someone who had seen death many times and no longer feared it. Your fleet is impressive, Theris said carefully, but I do not understand your tactics. Where are your battle lines? Your command ships? Your fallback positions? Hannah smiled. We don't have any. Explain. She pointed at the scattered human ships. Every one of those vessels operates independently. Every captain makes their own decisions. Every pilot chooses their own targets. There is no central command to destroy, no formation to break, no strategy to predict. Theris stared at her. That is not warfare. That is madness. It is both. Hannah's smile faded. Your species fights wars with rules. Objectives, timelines, acceptable losses. You fight to achieve goals. We fight to destroy enemies. Completely. Forever. The Dreth are brutal beyond measure. They show no mercy to anyone. Neither do we. The difference is, we have had much longer to practice. Theris felt something cold in his stomach. He had faced the Dreth in battle. He had seen what they did to captured worlds, the harvesting, the processing, the reduction of entire civilizations to raw materials. He had thought they were the most terrible enemy the galaxy had ever known. Now he wondered if he was standing next to something worse. Your species, he said slowly. You truly spent your whole history fighting each other. Yes, but why? Your planet is beautiful. Your people are intelligent. Why would you choose violence? Hannah was quiet for a moment. She stared out at the stars, her face unreadable. Because we were afraid, she said finally. Afraid of each other. Afraid of the dark. Afraid of being weak, of being conquered, of being forgotten. So we made ourselves strong. We invented new ways to kill. We trained our children to fight. We built civilizations on the bones of our enemies. She turned to face him. It was terrible. Millions died. Billions over the centuries. We almost destroyed ourselves a dozen times. But we survived. And when we finally reached the stars, we found that the galaxy was just as dangerous as our own planet. Just as cruel. Just as violent. So you prepared. Yes, for 50 years, we prepared. We built ships that could fight anything. We trained soldiers who would die for strangers. We developed weapons that... She paused. Well, you will see soon enough. An alarm sounded through the ship. Red lights flashed. The Dreth had arrived. Theres ran to the tactical display. His heart nearly stopped. The Dreth fleet filled the screen like a dark cloud. 400,000 ships, arranged in their famous spiral formation, a shape that concentrated firepower while protecting command vessels. No enemy had ever broken it. No enemy had ever survived it. We are outnumbered 80-1, Sorrel said. Her voice was steady, but her scales had turned the gray color of despair. Commander, perhaps we should retreat while we can. There is nowhere to retreat to, Theres replied. If we fall here, the core worlds fall next. This is our last stand. He looked at Captain Hana. She was watching the Dreth fleet with an expression he could not read. Not fear, not excitement. Something else. Something hungry. Your people are about to die, he said. 5,000 ships against 400,000. Does that not bother you? Hannah smiled. It was the coldest smile Theres had ever seen. Every human in that fleet volunteered, she said. They know the odds. They know most of them will not survive. And they came anyway. Do you know why? No, because dying for something matters is better than living for nothing. Because protecting strangers is what humans do. Because somewhere in our violent, bloody history, we learned one truth that makes us different from every other species in this galaxy. And what truth is that? Hannah turned to the window. The human fleet was beginning to move. Thousands of small ships accelerating toward the wall of Dreth warships. Toward certain death. Love, she said quietly. We fight for love. Love of our families. Love of our world. Love of life itself. And there is nothing in the universe more dangerous than a human fighting for what they love. The first human ships reached the Dreth fleet. The first explosions lit up the darkness. And Commander Theres watched in shock as the most terrible battle in galactic history began. The human ships did not fly in formation. They did not coordinate their attacks. They swarmed like angry insects, each vessel picking its own target, its own approach, its own moment to strike. The Dreth destroyed hundreds in the first minute. Their weapons were superior. Their armor was stronger. Their pilots were experienced veterans of 100 conquests. But the humans kept coming. Every time a ship was destroyed, 2 more took its place. They flew directly at the Dreth guns, absorbing fire that should have been aimed at larger targets. They rammed into engines and weapon systems. They detonated their own reactors against enemy hulls. They are sacrificing themselves, Sorrel whispered. Deliberately. On purpose. Yes, said Hannah. Her voice was steady, but Theres saw tears on her face. That is the doctrine of total war. You do not fight to live. You fight to make the enemy die. Everything is a weapon. Everyone is a soldier. And no price is too high for victory. Theres watched the carnage in silence. He had seen many terrible things in 300 years of war. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not just fighting. They were teaching the Dreth something new. They were teaching them fear. And the lesson was only beginning. Lieutenant Do-hyun was 26 years old. He had been born in a small town near the southern coast of Korea. He had dreamed of flying since he was a child, watching birds soar above the rice fields near his home. Now he was flying the fastest ship ever built by human hands, and he was about to die. He knew this. He had accepted it before he left Earth. The mission briefing had been clear. Engagement survival probability, less than 20%. Most pilots would not come home. Most fighters would become debris floating in the cold space between stars. But Do-yoon had volunteered anyway. They all had. His fighter screamed through the chaos of battle. Around him, ships exploded in brilliant flowers of fire. Dreth beams cut through the darkness like glowing swords. Human vessels broke apart, spilling their crews into the vacuum. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing he had ever seen. Target acquired, his computer announced. A dreadnought 2 kilometers of black metal and terrible weapons. It was destroying human ships by the dozen, its guns never stopping, its armor untouched by anything thrown at it. Do-yoon checked his weapons. Empty. He had fired everything in his first attack run. His shields were gone. His engine was damaged. He had nothing left. Nothing except his ship itself. All units, this is Lieutenant Do-hyun, he said into his radio. I am making a direct approach on the Dreadnought Blackfire. Targeting engine section. It has been an honor. He pushed his throttle forward. His fighter accelerated toward the massive ship, faster and faster, until the stars became lines of light around him. The dreadnought tried to shoot him down. Beams flashed past his cockpit. Missiles exploded nearby. But he was too small, too fast, too close. In the last second before impact, Do-hyun thought of his mother, and the rice fields, and the birds. His fighter hit the dreadnought's engine section at nearly a tenth of the speed of light. The explosion was visible from every ship in the system. The dreadnought's engines died. 2 kilometers of Dreth warship went dark and began to drift helplessly, unable to move or fight. One human. One small ship. One life. That was the cost of removing a dreadnought from the battle. All across the battlefield, similar stories played out. Captain Myrie commanded a cruiser called the Sunrise. It was her home for 5 years, her crew, her family. She had 200 people under her command, and she loved every one of them. She also knew what had to be done. The Dreth carrier World Taker was launching fighters by the thousands. Each fighter it sent out killed more humans. Each minute it operated meant more deaths. And it was too well protected for any normal attack to reach it. All hands, this is the captain, Myrie announced. Her voice was calm, steady. Abandon ship. Get to the escape pods. That is an order, Captain? Her first officer's voice was confused. What are you doing? What needs to be done? Now go. She waited until the last pod launched. Then she took manual control of the Sunrise and aimed it at the World Taker's hangar bay, the one opening in its armor, the one weak point. The cruiser hit the carrier at full speed. Both ships died together in a ball of fire that could be seen from the surface of Vareth itself. 200 escape pods drifted in space. Inside them, 200 crew members wept for their captain. But 5,000 Dreth fighters never launched. Sergeant Jisoo was not supposed to be a hero. She was a maintenance specialist, not a combat pilot. Her job was to fix broken ships, not fly them into battle. But there were no more pilots left on the destroyer Thunder, and someone had to fly it. The Dreth command ship was massive. It was the flagship of the entire invasion fleet, carrying the admirals who coordinated every attack. If it fell, the Dreth would lose their leadership, their coordination, their ability to fight as one force. It was also the most protected ship in the enemy fleet. Jisoo flew the Thunder through a storm of fire. Ships died around her. Missiles struck her hull. Beams burned through her armor. By the time she reached the command ship, her destroyer was falling apart around her. She had one weapon left, the reactor. "For Earth," she said quietly. Then she triggered the overload. The explosion killed her instantly. It also killed the 3 Dreth admirals coordinating the invasion. It blinded the enemy fleet's communication system. It turned their precise, coordinated attack into chaos. 1 sergeant. 1 broken ship. 1 act of sacrifice. That was the beginning of the end. Commander Theres watched from the eternal victory, unable to believe what he was seeing. The human fleet was being destroyed. In the first 30 minutes, they had lost over half their ships. The space around Vorath was filled with debris and bodies, and the fading heat of countless explosions. But the Dreth were losing too. Not ships, something more important. They were losing capability. Engines disabled. Weapons destroyed. Sensors blinded. Communications cut. One by one, the great warships of the Dreth Armada were being crippled. They are not trying to kill the ships, Theres realized. They are trying to disable them. Captain Hannah stood beside him. Tears still ran down her face, but her voice was steady. "A dead ship is useless to us," she said. "A crippled ship is a trap. It blocks firing lanes. It requires rescue. It creates confusion. Our pilots are not fighting to win. They are fighting to make the Dreth unable to fight at all, at the cost of their own lives." Yes, Hannah's jaw tightened. Every human out there knows they are probably going to die. And they went anyway, because that is what we do. We sacrifice so that others may live. Theres looked at the battle map. The Dreth spiral formation had collapsed. Ships that should have been supporting each other were scattered, drifting, blind. The precise coordination that had crushed 100 worlds was gone, replaced by chaos and fear. And then the second wave arrived. Admiral Una had been waiting. She had held back 10,000 ships, fresh and armed and ready, while the first wave did its terrible work. Now she brought them in. Her voice came through every speaker in the fleet, calm and cold. "All units, this is Admiral Una. The enemy is crippled. Finish them. No prisoners. No mercy. No retreat." The second wave hit the Dreth like a hammer hitting glass. Ships that had survived the first assault were overwhelmed. Carriers with no fighters were torn apart. Dreadnoughts with no engines were picked apart piece by piece. Commanders with no communications screamed orders that no one could hear. In the final moments of the battle, some Dreth ships tried to surrender. They broadcast surrender signals on every frequency. They powered down their weapons. They waited for the mercy that every civilized species would show to a beaten enemy. The humans did not stop. Captain Hannah watched her people destroy the Dreth, one ship at a time. Her face was expressionless. "They are surrendering," Theres said. "Your people are killing ships that have surrendered. Yes, that is a war crime. That is murder." Hannah turned to look at him. Her eyes were ancient, tired, filled with a weight that no young species should carry. "Do you know what the Dreth did to the 14 worlds they conquered?" she asked. "Do you know what harvesting means?" Theres did not answer. "They take the population," Hannah said. "Every living being. They process them. They turn them into raw materials, into fuel, into food for their soldiers." Her voice cracked. "Billions of people, reduced to components. That is what the Dreth do to species that surrender." She turned back to the window. "We are not being cruel," she said quietly. "We are being kind. We are making sure they can never do this to anyone ever again." The battle lasted exactly 62 minutes. When it was over, 400,000 Dreth ships were debris. The greatest invasion fleet in galactic history had ceased to exist. And the humans, what remained of them, gathered their dead and prepared for the next step. The war was not over. There were still Dreth worlds, still Dreth soldiers, still Dreth leaders who needed to answer for what they had done. But the galaxy had learned something new, something that would change everything. Humans were not primitives. Humans were not weaklings. Humans were not savages. Humans were the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. And they had just announced themselves. 3 days after the battle, the Great Assembly met again. The crystal halls were silent. The representatives who had laughed at humanity now sat in their seats like statues, afraid to move, afraid to speak. The war was over. The Dreth were gone. And everything they thought they knew about the galaxy had been proven wrong. Admiral Una walked into the chamber alone. She looked tired. Her uniform was wrinkled. There were dark circles under her eyes. She had not slept since the battle. There had been too much to do. Bodies to recover. Survivors to rescue. Wounded to heal. And plans to make for what came next. Captain Hannah was not with her. Captain Hannah would never stand anywhere again. She had died in the final assault, leading a squadron of fighters against the last Dreth flagship. Her body had never been found. Una stopped at the center of the chamber. She looked around at the 17 species who had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They stared back at her with a mix of fear and awe and something that might have been shame. "The Dreth Dominion has been destroyed," Una said. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. "Our forces have secured their home systems. Their military has been eliminated. Their leadership has been executed. There will be no counterattack. There will be no rebuilding. There will be no Dreth." High Chancellor Morvith rose slowly from his seat. His crystal body was dim, almost gray. He moved like someone who had aged 1,000 years in 3 days. "You eliminated them completely?" he asked. "An entire species?" "Not entirely. We found civilian populations on several planets. Non-combatants, children, the old, the sick." Una paused. "They have been relocated to isolated systems. They will be monitored. They will never have weapons or warships again. But they will be allowed to live." "Why?" Ambassador Kellis asked. "After what they did, after the billions they murdered, why show them mercy?" Una looked at the Serpent Ambassador. Her face was unreadable. "Because we are human," she said simply. "We kill our enemies. We do not commit genocide. We are not monsters." The chamber was silent. 18,000 humans died in this war, Una continued. 18,000 people who left their families, their homes, their world, to fight for strangers who had ignored them for 500 years. They died for species who called them primitives. They sacrificed everything for people who would not have done the same for them. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of every representative. "I want you to remember that. I want you to remember that when you needed help, we came. When you were dying, we fought for you. When the galaxy was about to end, humanity stood between you and extinction." "We will remember," Morvith said quietly. "The Confederation will never forget what your people did." Una nodded. "Good, because I have something else to tell you." She pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, a star map showing human territory. "For 50 years, we hid our development from you. We built a fleet in secret. We advanced our technology without your knowledge. We did this because we were afraid that you would see us as a threat and destroy us before we could defend ourselves." The representatives shifted uncomfortably. They knew she was right. If they had discovered human development earlier, some of them would have called for Earth's destruction. "That ends now," Una said. "No more secrets. No more hiding. Humanity is here, and we are part of this galaxy whether you like it or not." She looked at Morvith directly. "We do not want to rule. We do not want to conquer. We do not want to be your masters. We want to be your partners, equals, allies in whatever challenges come next. And if we refuse? Ambassador Gorn asked. The Talaxian's fur was still bristled with fear, but his voice was steady. What if we decide we do not want humans as partners? Una smiled. It was a sad smile, tired and old. Then you will live in fear. Every night, you will wonder if we will come for you. Every ship you see will make you nervous. Every shadow will hold terrors. She shrugged. Or you can accept our offer and never fear anything again. Because if you are our allies, we will die for you. We have already proven that. The representatives looked at each other. 17 species, centuries of history, thousands of years of politics and rivalries and distrust. They had never agreed on anything quickly. But today was different. One by one, they nodded. One by one, they accepted. Ambassador Kellis spoke for all of them. The Galactic Confederation welcomes humanity as a full member. From this day forward, we are allies. We are partners. We are family. Una bowed her head. Thank you. You will not regret this. After the ceremony, Una walked through the crystal corridors of the assembly building alone. Her footsteps echoed in the empty halls. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on her shoulders. She stopped at a window that looked out over the planet below. Vorith was beautiful green forests and blue oceans and cities that sparkled like jewels. A world that had almost died. A world that humanity had saved. You would have loved this view, Hana, she said quietly to no one. She stood there for a long time, remembering the dead. Remembering the sacrifice. Remembering everything it had cost to reach this moment. Behind her, footsteps approached. Commander Theris stopped a respectful distance away. Admiral, the Confederation has already begun updating their records. They are changing humanity's classification. To what? Class 0, Apex species. They are adding warnings to every database in the galaxy. Do not engage under any circumstances. Humanity is protected by the full force of the Galactic Confederation. Una laughed softly. It was a bitter sound. 500 years ago, they called us primitives. Today, they call us the most dangerous species in the galaxy. She shook her head. We have not changed. We are still the same people who fought each other with sticks and stones. Still the same species that nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. The only difference is now they can see what we always were. And what is that? Theris asked. Una turned to face him. Her eyes were dry now, clear and hard. Survivors. That is what we are. We survive. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, no matter how much we lose. We survive and we protect our own. Today, this galaxy became our own, and we will protect it with everything we have. She walked past him toward the exit. Come. There is work to do. The Dreth are finished, but the galaxy is still wounded. There are refugees to help, worlds to rebuild, lives to save. Humanity does not rest just because the war is over. Theris followed her. Your people are remarkable, Admiral. I have never seen anyone fight the way you do. We are not remarkable, Una said over her shoulder. We are just human. And this is what humans do. We face the darkness, and we refuse to look away. We meet our enemies, and we do not stop until they are defeated. We see suffering, and we end it. She stopped at the door and looked back at him one last time. Remember that, Commander. Remember what we did here, and remember what we will do for anyone who stands with us. Then she was gone. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. Humanity spread across the stars, not as conquerors, but as partners. They helped rebuild the worlds the Dreth had destroyed. They shared their technology and their culture and their strange, violent history. They became the defenders of the weak, the protectors of the innocent, the warriors who would fight for anyone who needed them. The old records were deleted. The entry that had called humans primitives was erased forever. In its place, a new entry was written. It was short, just a few lines. But every species in the galaxy learned to read it. Every child was taught its meaning. It said, "In 1 hour, humanity did what 17 species could not accomplish in 300 years. They did not merely defeat the Dreth, they erased them from existence. Let this serve as both tribute and warning. The humans are our allies. Pray they remain so." And at the bottom, in smaller text, a single sentence that would be remembered for 10,000 years. They came for strangers. They fought for strangers. They died for strangers. This is what it means to be human. The galaxy was never the same. And humanity had finally found its place among the stars.